Hi, I'm Seamless, and today is Friday, which means it's time for a new How to Base tutorial. And today, I'm going to show you how to make this sound. This is Reaktor 6. These are the blocks in Reaktor 6. This is the first sound that I made with the Reaktor 6, and it's more or less the first thing I've done with any kind of seriousness with any Reaktor version. And I am so far annoyed at this. Not because it sucks, no, because it's actually really cool, and I'm really mad that I didn't know it was this cool. And what I think is cool about this, I don't actually think is limited to Reaktor 6, because I went and tested actually a particular quality of what's happening right here on the core module, and it does the same thing. And I don't know, I actually don't know what that means. For all I know, before Reaktor 6, none of this was possible. But I have a sneaking suspicion that it was possible, and that annoys me. It annoys me a lot. Anyway, let's talk about why this is awesome. So what I'm doing here is I've got two filters. They're weird of them, and there's two of them because in true modular fashion they're mono. I think again, this is the first time I've ever actually used Reaktor 6 for anything at all, and I'm using it in a post sense. I'm not actually using the generate anything, and there's actually a reason for that. Well, what's happening though, there's two filters, and the cutoff is being controlled by two sources. The first source is by this macro control over here. Just moving around, that's all kinds of nice. And then the second controller is actually just a straight up secondary input. And mod A is controlling the macro, and mod B is the secondary control. You can kind of see the little macro movement flipping the hell out there. And that's because it's being modulated extremely fast. And, well, not that fast. This is bass tones after all. So we're talking at maybe a maximum 100 hertz. I can just find out how high that is. Although actually I lied because saw waves. At any point, any variety of all that, it's still basic modulation. But the point being is, as being FM'd, the control is being modulated at an audio rate, which is the difference between the opposite of what's referred to as a low frequency oscillation, as an audio rate oscillation. And it's causing the majority of what's happening. So, without the audio rate modulation, what happens if I just turn this down? That's the sound. And then with the audio rate modulation, is what's happening. You can hear kind of a little bit of the crackliness is happening there as well. And again, first time I've ever done anything with this, and I haven't spent that much time with it, so I'm not fully aware of the intricacies of how Reaktor works and its limitations. However, I believe their whole goal here with the blocks thing was to say that they could actually have parity with typical modular level control. And I will say that at least at this juncture where I'm not super familiar with it, it's actually about as hard to use as the modulator rig. So good on them for that. In terms of getting this to work like this. So the reason why I'm doing this in post, not just trying to make a sound out of only Reaktor, is because there's a couple of things that I expect to be limitations whenever I hear a developer talk about how well internal modulation can be done that's akin to analog modular synthesis. And it usually has to do with audio rate modulation, because this isn't the first time I've seen anything have audio rate oscillation in a DAW. A pretty good example would actually be something like Massive, that has a filter FM control, kind of, or Diva. One of the UHE plugins, maybe both of them, maybe even though that what was it, Brazil, Beatzil, whatever, that one that's apparently very modular. Maybe that one does it too, but the limitations tend to be that, well, they're only inside the plugin. You can't run an input into it and have it do that. It just doesn't do it. And then the other limitation is that there's just it can't be done as fast, or it's not really that accurate, or it can't be done on everything. On Massive, for example, Massive filter FM can only be done on the low pass and the high pass filters, and it can only be done on one filter at a time. So you can't do what I'm doing, which is bandpass filter FM and that kind of thing. And so not only can this be done with everything so far, all the stuff I've tried to do it with, which wasn't all that much, has allowed for just like if you can link it in there, it goes in there and it does what you want it to do. And then the other thing is that it could do this on incoming audio. So this isn't applying any to its internal synthesis. I have a Harmer patch through some stuff, and then that signal's coming in here, and it's going into the filter, and then it's being filtered again by another external source. The external source for the modulation is this other sound. It had multiple inputs here. And it's stereo because at one point I had to make this stereo, but it's not actually stereo, so it doesn't really need to be doing that anymore. But just to see that it could be stereo, I did that with stereo. So this has passed the test for me personally of every kind of capability that I want for this, at least this specific setup. I'm noting that in the availability of their various block stuff, they are mostly keeping it to super basic things. It's mostly just oscillators and filters, and then different ways to control the filters and oscillators, which is not to say that's not a very powerful collection of stuff, because most of the analog world is still just that anyway. But a lot of the more sophisticated things, like there is an distortion unit. At least one thing I'm noticing as being a distortion unit. I'm sure there's other things that are distortion. There's various mixed things, but I didn't, for example, one of the big reasons why I'm having an external source here and not just using the note there, because there's a note in that you can use to control it. One of the reasons I'm using external source is because I couldn't figure out a way to reverse the polarity of the saw waves coming out of the main oscillator. One of the other oscillators might have had a different saw wave, but one of the things that like filters, for example, do, I'm an idiot. I just realized the solution to that. So the way that the modifiers work here is that you have mod A and mod B, and you can collectively go in there. And when you're on mod A or mod B, you click on the mod, which I didn't get for a second, and then you click on this, and suddenly you get these things, and you're able to change the depth. And that could have gone negative, and that would have essentially been the different polarity of the saw wave, because I'm a genius. I was that big of an idiot when it came to the analog stuff too, so I'm not too mad about that. But that was what led me to test being able to have an external source, because I couldn't figure out how to make that work out. So yeah, anyway. But the original point that I was making is that there's no, I mean, honestly, kind of like in the modular world, a lot of the things that do what you like, crazy stuff like choruses, flangers, and vocoders and all that, there's not analog versions of that. Those are all digital things. And there are digital modules or whatever that work in the modular world, but there are not analog versions of that kind of stuff. So I'm not surprised that when they came out with the whole modular version of this kind of business, that's all. That just is what that does, and that's fine. And of course, there's also, I'm sure you can mix and match with other Reaktor ensembles and other stuff. And I don't even know, because I've never used Reaktor before with any kind of seriousness. And this entire thing, I'm just so mad that this capability has existed, because I asked people before if Reaktor or things like it could modulate stuff at audio rate. That was all I ever wanted to know, and nobody gave me a concrete answer. Nobody told me. And then when I went and tried to do it for myself, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, so I left it alone because I had better things to do. But damn, I'm mad that was a thing it could do. And as far as I can tell, it does it well. I might do more tests in the future or whatever to see how well it stacks up to, like, you know, the real thing. But it doesn't even matter if I had the real thing or not. Like, it does it well enough that if I knew this was a thing, I probably wouldn't have gotten the real thing, to be totally and completely honest with myself and you. I probably still would have gotten it. Probably, because it's awesome. But this extremely small, relatively simplistic thing that it's doing right now indicates and shows capability for extraordinarily complex things that I am absolutely impressed exists at all. Moving on. So the original sound is actually just a really simplistic Harmer thing. Well, simplistic by my standards. So this is what the Harmer sounds like by itself. Very, very loud, apparently. Could have sworn I turned everything down, but yeah. I did not turn the limiter off. No, I didn't. I'm a smart person. So that's what that does. And the way this works is there's 3 voices in unison, crazy switched up harmonic unison pitch window. a little bit of harmonic randomness on the spectral side, which means to say that the starting position of every individual harmonic is now different every time. It's on square harmonic types, and I have the detune set to 0.02 over here, which is causing the reason to happen. Now, the reason why it's stable is because I'm editing the articulator of the pitch thing here to go down really fast. This is to say that it turns off, because if I didn't do that, that's what it would do, which wouldn't really necessarily be a bad thing. In fact, I wonder what that sounds like with the real setup. Sounds kind of metal, but the point being, if I wanted to be consistent, I have to have it come down like that, like that. But I'm thinking kind of, yeah, whatever. And then it's just phase the set. So kind of be careful with these settings though, because any kind of little nudge of each of them will cause to be quite a different sound. It will especially have an impact on what happens to it later. And then distorted. That's pretty much it. That's all that's really happening to this guy. And then there's bandpass in 2 notches. Now, I actually did the bandpass 2 notches and the compression after I'd already done the filtering. I actually did that thing first. I did the reactor first, just to see that if it could be done, and then I did the rest of it all afterwards, after the fact. So this at this point with that, and then the compression just kind of just crushing up all of the bands, just so that there's. Because if I didn't do that, if I didn't have the compression on, this is what the filter would do. Not like totally too different, but levels wise, it's very inconsistent. So compression to save the day, and then we get the reactor. So setting up the reactor is a bit interesting. And I'm going to explain this as deep as I can, because there's a greater than reasonable chance that when I gave you this FLP, that this isn't going to save right. So thankfully, this is a relatively simple process. So you go here, you go to your new ensemble, and then up here, file, new ensemble. And then you go to library. Bring this thing down because it resets it all the time. Go to reactor blocks, bento box. And the one that I used, the filter that I used is this guy, FLT SVF. And that's what this dude is. Now, this dude, I got 2 of them because it's mono. Unless there's some mode about it, I don't know, to make it stereo, but it's mono. And then you click on this guy to change the filter type, and this is bandpass mode. Now, that business I mentioned about mod A and mod B. So, mod A is this guy. This is the macro knobs, which are in the util section. Macro knobs right there. Bam. There's also switches and some other cool shit, but that's just knobs. And then you take out one and you just click and drag things like this, and then you connect to the stuff like that, and then you can unhook it like so. So they're both on mod A, and then the cutoffs of both of these are all the way down. And then when we click on mod A, we go to this guy, this thing here, and we just go all the way up. And this means now that the macro knob is essentially 1-to-1 the entirety of the cutoff value. That's what that does. So now we've controlled the cutoff. Oops. Yeah. You want to in and then out and then 1-2, input 1-2, out 1-2, that kind of thing. And then that's pretty much that. Now we want to have mod B, we want to have FM. So we have to clone these 2. These are already here. So just right click, duplicate, and it'll automatically make it 3 and 4. But if it didn't for some reason, you can come in here and there's a properties option, and then it'll tell you what index it is. I believe you can change that, but I'm not gonna screw with it on purpose. Yeah, thank you. Boink, and then these are here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you have to actually configure the patcher side of things to be what you want. You can see here's all kinds of extra shit going on. But so you go in here, you go to inputs, audio, add 1. Actually, I guess now you don't need to do that. So basically just enable these guys. These are all kind of already here. Maybe they're not, but if there is or is not, add them until there are. You don't need to have 4 of them, but you do need to have 2 of them. And once you do that, the main input no longer goes to 1-2. Actually, rather, hold on. Now after we've done that, I'm sorry, this is something I tend not to have to explain to people, but I'm gonna because it gets hard. And this is what happens with third-party stuff. Go to processing on the tabs here, and you have to actually start telling it where stuff is. By default, it actually isn't going to say anything. And if you hit automap, and you haven't done this yet, it'll just map everything to 1 because there's only 1 input. However, the 1 input also it knows that 1 input is left and right, and versus not left and right, that whole idea. But now that you've added more inputs, you need to tell it which ones are left and right. So there are only when you add each of these, so input number 1 here is in there. That's 1 and 2, and then this one is. And then input 2 is 3 and 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4, left and right. So it's stereo pairs. So now it knows that this guy's 1 and 2 and this guy's 3 and 4. And then output, I actually was doing a test. I was going to try to see if I can loop back in. I have a second level of resampling going on in the same reactor, but intelligently, Patcher is designed that you can't feedback loop stuff like that. So never mind. But if you do have to also similarly remap the outputs to be, the right thing. And also on the settings page, there's also the input ports on the MIDI. There's already a voice MIDI input. You don't necessarily have to do that. But this is actually why, by the way, I sort of advocate if you're gonna integrate Reaktor effects with something that you're already doing, it's way easier to do this with Patcher than it is to try and do it inside the mixer inserts. Because then you got to use MIDI outs and you have to do the port matching, and that's all kinds of annoying. But if you're in the Patcher, you can just take the MIDI voice output and then have it in there, and then it'll automatically know what note you're using. And you don't have to worry about mapping anything because it's already mapped. Except for all this input-output mapping shit that we have to do right now. But once you've done that, output 3 to 4 will now be the second input that we've made here, in which this case, this is just a citrus and a saw wave. Now, the reason, remember I talked about I wanted the reverse saw wave. This is actually, this is going down this way, but I had the polarity going the other way. This is 100%, this is negative 100%. So now it's as if this is on the bottom and this is on top, and we get that kind of ramp. It's ramping up as opposed to going down. And it's giving us the bubbly nature of this whole thing. That's what that's all about. Now, I'm controlling the intensity of the FM on the filter by the volume of this operator, of this guy. Because as it turns out, changing the intensity of FM is accomplished by modulating the volume of the modulating operator. It's good to see that this actually still holds true on every kind of FM there is, which is really cool. You can actually see when I change this thing that it changes the overall intensity. I am endlessly entertained by that. And that's how this sound works. Once we're done with that, it goes into a filter, which this existed before this existed, rather after this existed. It goes into the distortion unit, and then I use the EQ to change out some harmonics to make this work a little bit better with distortion. And then that goes into another EQ, which gives us the kind of 500 hertzy hole in the thing that sounds really good in deep drum and bass. And as a cutoff, I put out 31 hertz because there was a lot of weird, like really low frequency movement going on that didn't necessarily need to be happening. And it's kind of that's a product of whipping a phaser, a filter around and adjusting the phase of everything because that's how filters work. And then the final EQ, or rather compressor, is this big old Maximus. It's just bumping up the ranges, much like the other guy was. And then lightly limiting it into the end. And then the demo at the beginning was accomplished by having the limiter all the way up. But it doesn't seem to matter. That's how this sound was made. Short answer being that this was accomplished with filter FM. What's neat about this is that this is a square sound. So kind of like if this is off, we get square, and this is on, we get saw. And that's because modulating at the base frequency, at the fundamental tone, and not just because it's a saw wave, but because once we're modulating at the fundamental tone's speed. If we modulate it 1 octave higher, we get the square harmonics again. But I wanted the saw harmonics. So yeah, that's a lot of fun. I will put up this FLP for download. So just modulation, the way this is working is that this is the main filter, I believe, and this is, or is that the main filter? Nope, this is the FM intensity. You can see because this is modulation X. That's control of the citrus. This is the filter, macro 1. It's labeled, read my labels, and this is the bandpass and 2 notches on the EQ before all this. I look forward to learning a bit more about Reaktor. Because it could be. Could it be? If you have any questions about this, please let me know. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and all that good stuff. Check out my Patreon. And as usual, have a nice day.